And ladies and gentlemen, on the program, on the experience, we are joined by another person that will be opening up for me in Charlotte, North Carolina, at the Charlotte Legends Fan Fest. No, he won't. I've solved that problem. But ladies and gentlemen, our guest, good old JR himself, Jim Ross. And Jim, you're not going to be opening up for me. I've figured it out. You're the main event because you're going to be done by about 11 o'clock or so in Charlotte on Thursday night on opening night. And then by the time that I get on and get started, it's going to be like checking in on a new day at the Days Inn. I'm going to be opening for everybody else on Friday.
Oh, good. That makes my ego so much more soothed. Because the deal is that I need to distance my show from yours because there's no way that I could, you're going to blow everybody away. That midnight slot is a primo slot in Charlotte because it's you can do whatever the hell you want to do. And
I used to do that anyway, but it's more tolerated, because at least I'm not contributing to the delinquency of mostly any minors at that point. But it's going to be packed. We talked about it a little bit earlier on the show, but the first day of FanFest, Thursday, July 30th, is going to be not only does the dealer's room and Cornette's Collectibles will be out in force all day, opens at noon. But also the Mid-Atlantic Memories documentary world premiere that you're going to be doing the narration for.
I am.
And are in the middle of production on. And then immediately after that, well, not immediately, they'll have time to go potty. And then you're the first time for Ringside with Jim Ross in the southeastern United States, right? Right there in Charlotte at FanFest.
Yeah, certainly the first time in the Carolinas. And I don't guess New Orleans is considered. Is New Orleans southeast?
No. That's south.
Okay. So yeah, southeast would be a first. Certainly first in the Carolinas and the first in Charlotte. So it'll be good. And people have heard about me doing the show, and I have a great time doing it. It's a lot of fun, a lot of good stories. It covers a lot of different eras and time frames. But the real key thing is for the Q&As, and I think you probably would agree. The Q&As always take on a life of their own. They always are a little bit of an adventure. You can generally segue from a question, the answer, to another story. So every show is different, and I'm looking forward to that. That'll be. But
one of the highlights. One of the highlights I hope I'll see again because I'm going to watch it. I'm just going to chain myself in the lobby all day on Thursday and just watch everything. But the story about basically Leroy McGurk attempting to get you to help, or Ted DiBiase to commit suicide or commit homicide, and you trying to. You know where I'm going with this. I don't want to give the story away, but that was my favorite of the New Orleans show.
Well, the thing about the back in the old days, everybody always talks about paying your dues. You got to pay your dues. Well, a lot of us, and yourself included, work for little or nothing on a variety of little tasks when we first got in the business. And one of my jobs was to drive the promoter who was blind, got blinded in a car accident, which it was not a great omen for another driver. You always wonder about. People always say it's always great to fly with Ric Flair because he's already been in one plane crash, and there's no way that anybody would ever be in two plane crashes. So Leroy had a plan that he and I were going to go to Shreveport under the guise of doing television, and I was going to help him murder the $1 Million Man. So that's where the story starts. It's an interesting story, and it's a true story. Well, that's one of the stories we'll talk about, and I'll do that one just for you because it's very enlightening. I did that story at the Cauliflower Alley Club in front of, and Ted was getting honored that night in Vegas, and he and his wife Melanie were sitting in the front row right there in the front table in Vegas, and she had never heard that story, and he of course he had heard bits and pieces of it from other people, so. I did it for them, and it was really the look on their face telling that whole story because I don't know that Melanie knew that Teddy had this is long before he met her, that he had a romantic dalliance,
a fling,
fling with young Mike McGurk, who was like a senior in high school. I say she was a young woman, and people think I'm telling a story about, somebody, the Hatfields and the McCoys, and somebody got married, or Mooney Lynn married Loretta when they were 14 or something. She was at least a senior in high school. Mooney Lynn. Mooney Lynn made your podcast, I bet you, for the first time.
That is of Alice. Can you verify that? Is that a first for Mooney Lynn, the husband of Loretta Lynn, on the podcast?
It is the first time I've heard that name, so I think so.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, another first with Jim Ross. And speaking of first, you're doing the narration of the Mid-Atlantic Memories documentary. I sat down and did some sound bites and told some stories for that a while back. John Andoska is the filmmaker. He does a great job. His stuff looks incredible. It's going to be the premiere that night. And Greg Price has come up with one of those old carny fucking promoter tricks on his pre-orders, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to this now. If you pre-order the Mid-Atlantic Memories documentary on DVD or whatever the young folks are watching these days, from NWALegends.com, you get a trading card. You can pick a signed card of either Jim Cornette or Jim Ross. And I think that is it's an old carny trick trying to make people pick and choose. I think that's cruel. It's not good for the cult of Cornette members. It's not good for the Ross Rangers out there. So I think the only solution, I've mulled this over, Jared, the only solution is when you pre-order from NWALegends.com, the documentary DVD, order 2 and get 1 card of each. That's the only way you can avoid getting screwed by Greg Price.
I think you are a very brilliant diplomat. And I think if the president, whoever is going to be the next president, and God can only predict, you should be the ambassador for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, because that is an amazing bipartisan solution to this dilemma. Buy 2. That's what you should do, folks.
Yes.
Buy 2. I'll tell you this, in all seriousness about this deal, we are going to sign these cards, and they're not going to be stamped. They're going to be authentic signatures. Someday they'll probably be worth something. I didn't say a lot, but something. But they are legit. They are real.
If you wait long enough, folks.
That's right. Wait long enough. But here's the deal. The movie itself is really going to be good. The sound bites are really unique. And one of the reasons I think that the sound bites are unique is that this is not a quote-unquote corporate or company project. This is not a Turner-produced project for Turner or a WWE-produced project for WWE type thing. It is totally independent, which allows the talent to be totally honest and tell all the story, and not just the part that it got. You get to the part of the good stuff, and then you got to stop because you don't want to, pose any embarrassment to the corporate side. So
because it's not gonna make the cut anyway. So you might as well not get heat on yourself, right?
Right. So, but this is going to be this is very raw, and it's real, and it's how guys feel, and it's a lot of passion and a lot of emotion, and everybody, when I got in the business in '74, one of the destinations that a lot of the old timers are passing through or working 6 months or a year from McGurk and Watts in their territory was they were usually traveling east. That either want to work, maybe Knoxville or down in Pensacola. Certainly Atlanta was a destination, but Florida and the Carolinas were the 2 big ones. And then, eventually everybody wanted to work, quote unquote, New York, because that was where the big money was, and everybody had their eye on that. But if you discount the New York territory, it's arguable which was the most attractive territory to want to go to. Was it the Mid-Atlantic or was it Florida? And you'll get guys that'll say both, but the Mid-Atlantic got just as much support.
They wanted to go to Florida to work for Eddie Graham. And if he saw something in them, he might champion them as the next NWA champion, and they would definitely learn something. But in the Carolinas, with the exception, I would think most of the time of the Northeast, WWF, that was the biggest money territory.
Yeah, great towns. And Mr. Crockett was a very well-respected wrestling promoter. And you don't oftentimes hear those words in the same sentence.
That's
He was
like
honest.
jumbo shrimp and government intelligence.
Exactly. Spot on. But he was an honest man, and he was a good payoff guy. You always hear there are only a handful of great payoff guys that we've all, you hear in the general discussion about wrestling. Paul Bosch was one, Sam Mushnick was one, Mr. Crockett was one that certainly stood out as, you got what you earned. And they had some good clubs in that territory. The economy was healthy. You didn't have large scale people don't talk about this a lot, but there wasn't massive long terms of unemployment in that era. You had tobacco growers, and you had textile mills, and you had furniture factories, and you had all kinds of different businesses that stayed pretty healthy, which meant that the population base stayed pretty damned employed and had a little bit of disposable income that they could spend on going to watch wrestling. And the other thing, Corny, is that all those areas at that time, 60s, 70s, they were kind of devoid of professional sports teams. They didn't have the Charlotte football team.
Between Washington D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia, there was no professional sports except for wrestling. And
Right.
and here's something else. I did J.J. Dillon and I did the Back to the Territories release from Kayfabe Commentaries, our good friends here on the program, about Mid-Atlantic Wrestling and Jim Crockett Promotions. And when you think about it, that territory, the Carolinas, Crockett Promotions remains the only wrestling promotion, I think, in the country. Somebody may can find one for me, but certainly one of the only ones that stayed under the same ownership from the time that Jim Crockett established things in the 30s until the 80s, when his sons sold out to Turner Broadcasting. There were never any outside owners. None of the wrestlers that I know of had a piece. I mean, they may have given a booker like a George Becker or someone a percentage of towns, but there was no outside ownership. And I think that's a record.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Well, what it does, too, it establishes continuity, a way of doing business, a system, and structure. And, of course, with a lot of pro wrestlers being never growing up sophomores and living the life of, tomorrow's never going to, today's never going to end. The money's always going to be there.
Bluto in Animal House is...
They needed structure, and they needed leadership, and Mr. Crockett was always there to provide that. And he seemed like he had a pretty good feel, Corny, for picking out his bookers, guys that were pretty solid guys, that were good, solid citizens that that were responsible, and were going to make sure that they were going to take care of the territory and adhere to his principles and his policies.
Not only his bookers, but in a lot of cases, his top baby faces, the Johnny Weavers of the world that later worked in the office, and Sandy Scott, and maybe with his top heels, not so much. Homer Odell had some great runs in the Carolinas, and including once when he was arrested for with an automatic rifle shooting at submarines in the lake outside of Charlotte.
That's always good publicity. At least he wasn't a babyface doing like some of them might do today when they forget what they are. They don't know what they are, most guys today, but they're trapeze artists. But nonetheless, I thought Mr. Crockett did a real good job, and I never talked to any of the. I was very, very impressionable. Probably still am to a large degree of guys that I'm around, and I really wanted to learn and sponge up all this business. And when I got on the road as a referee in the mid '70s, and because I needed the money, I was the driver getting that 2 cents a mile trance because I needed the money, and it really amounted to something and contributed to my income. That I never heard anybody that rode with me, and they would talk about the territories and this angle and that angle and all the things the wrestlers talk about. But no one ever had any negativity to talk about the Carolinas. They always talked about it like You know, it was, I hope I get booked back there. Or I'm supposed to get a chance in a year, or they said in a couple of years I'll get another run there or whatever. But it was a place, it was a destination that wrestlers wanted to pass through. And it's funny, too, how many stayed and lived there. But that became home for a lot of guys.
Oh, yeah. And I loved it when I lived in Charlotte. Now when I go back, I can't handle the traffic. That was just starting 30 years ago when I moved there the first time. But I loved living there. It was so green and so nice. Well, and Alice is going to Chapel Hill, so she's going to be in the Carolinas, my old hometown. Hey, speaking of the Carolinas and a destination point, this summer's Fan Fest, you're going to be involved because we have 3 of the 4 faces of the Mount Rushmore of wrestling announcers. You, Lance Russell, and Bob Caudle are all going to be in the same place at the same time at Fan Fest.
I am so excited about that. When I heard about that, and I appreciate the Mount Rushmore reference, so I know that Gordon Soley is the other. I would assume
that just means you have a face that looks like it's been whacked with an axe. That's what
yeah. There you go. No doubt. A face made for podcasting. That's why my roster report is doing so well. Is that you're going to look at my ass? I said on the tweet I sent out that one of the things that I had to do while I was in Charlotte as a fan was to get my picture taken with Bob Caudle and Lance.
Yeah.
A selfie or whatever the hell I got to do to get it done. But I want to get a picture of those guys because, you know, without those guys, and people, all of us that have been lucky to make a living in this crazy business, we got to give something to those that preceded us. We got to give something back. Got to acknowledge them. And without guys like Gordon Soley and Bob Caudle and the great Lance Russell and a ton of other guys that we could name, you know, the other wrestling broadcasters wouldn't have the life that many of us have had. And it's sad that probably a lot of broadcasters today couldn't name you 10 wrestling announcers from from another generation, or maybe 10 wrestlers. Hell, I don't know. But the point being is that Bob and Lance, you know, with Dusty passing away suddenly on June the 11th, and Buddy Landale passing away at age 53, and I say this in my podcast, you know, our tomorrows aren't guaranteed. And I'm not going to some sort of religious transformation, but I'm just saying that you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. And, you know, we're all getting older every day. That's your goal, get older. And Lance and Bob have been around a long time. God willing, they'll be around for a lot longer. But you never know. So I want to see Bob and Lance. That's a big deal to me. It's big for me to be able to see those guys. And that's what, to me, one of the charms. I've only been to one other Fan Fest in Charlotte. That was years ago when I inducted Danny Hodge into the Hall of Heroes. But it's a unique event that is family friendly. You kind of get these memories. You see guys that you haven't seen in a long time, and you have access to talk with them. It's not as formal and as structured as a lot of these things are. So I'm really excited about Bob and Lance being there, and I think that's good booking.
And I'm hosting Lance's Q&A. If you want to come and ask Lance a question, you can, because he had the one of the best lines I've ever heard in the history of lines here not long ago, when he said, "When I started in television, it was radio." And we had him here on the program a few months back, and he talked about he literally did live TV studio wrestling on Saturday night in Jackson, Tennessee in like 1954 or whatever, when you know, they didn't even have an idea of how to broadcast the news, and they're doing wrestling in the studio. You know, he lived through the evolution of TV wrestling. So and ended up working for Turner nationally. Before he retired. So then, speaking of retirement, you're the busiest retired guy. You know, this fucking retirement, it wears me out. I don't know about you, because you just got back from London. You're going to Iowa for the Wrestling Hall of Fame ceremony this weekend, right? You're going to be stopping through Memphis. Where are you going? Where can we find you, JR?
I'm going. I was in London 2 days. at the first ever London WrestleCon, which was a great experience. The guy did it right, a guy named Paul Inwood. He had it at a beautiful hotel, and in the bottom level of the hotel was kind of like a convention center, and he had all the activities were in the hotel. So you stayed in the hotel, you did your work in the hotel. It was good, smart, logistical planning. And then on the following Monday, I was there on the weekend. Then Shawn Michaels and I did a event together for the first time, basically a Q&A that sold out the London comedy store, and I think it was about 550 people. It was a nice little crowd, so that was a good experience. And then when this airs, I will have gone to Iowa, hopefully. And I'm going to stop off in Memphis to do a little bit of work, some recording work on my new album. No kidding. But I am going to go to Memphis, but I'm not going to do an album.
Would you play us a selection from your new LP?
So anyway, I'm going to go to Memphis, and then I'm going to fly from Memphis to Des Moines, and then I'm going to drive from Des Moines to Waterloo, and then I'm going to MC the National Wrestling Hall of Fame banquet on Saturday night in Waterloo. So I'll have all that done by the time people hear this, and then I'll be back in the rotation and getting ready for Charlotte coming into Charlotte. So we could. I'm astonished that the first night is going to be so damn packed. He's got Greg has got that thing really front loaded with some great things. That the premiere of that movie is going to be big, and the neat thing about this movie, I think, for our audience, for your podcast audience and my podcast audience, is that even though they may listen in England, for example, they're going to be able to order this DVD and get it shipped without any issues, and as they should, because we're both proud of our work. We both take a lot of pride in what we do. I ain't phoning nothing in on this narration or this whole deal, and neither are you.
That would be good if you could do it over the phone, though. That would be excellent.
Right. Well,
much like we do this humble program where we.
John's coming. Actually, John is coming to. He's spending a few days in Oklahoma. We're going to do this thing right, man. And I am.
My God, there won't be a piece of barbecue left, I bet, in the state of Oklahoma once he gets finished.
I'm going to fatten that boy up if I can. I'll tell you that. He's got. I think he and I will have both healthy appetites, but it'll be good. But the list of people that are in this thing are really it's really impressive. All the folks that have stepped up, that wanted to be a part of this documentary. And I'm a documentary freak. If there's a good one on TV, I want to watch it just about no matter what subject it's on. So I'm excited about that, and I'm still doing my podcast. As a matter of fact, Corny, I'm going to be every week on my homepage of my website, jrsbarbq.com, which is the most stupidest web name that my dumbass marketing guy back in the day did. So if you figure that
what is that website again? JR's
BARBQ. Yeah, BARBQ.com.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but it's bullshit. And the thing about it is that if you find the website, I do blogs there almost 3 or 4 days a week, but I also have my podcast schedule, and I've done some really neat interviews. I did one just the other day. Your name came up prominently with Steve Carino. When you introduced Steve Carino to me on the day in Hershey when I was going to be the new heel JR and do the promo about the pipe bomb promo.
Yeah, is that overpriced hellhole, etc.
Yeah. And he said, and I was, of course, in charge of talent, and you introduced me to, he's probably weighed about $175 and looked like a 1-2-3 kid. And you swerved us both by introducing me to him, and I gave him the cold shoulder. And until I interviewed him, he thought for like 19 years I hated him. And I said, that's corny, man. He got us both. And he said that rib lasted almost 2 decades. I said, I never had the first ever a bad thought about you. I said, but we did that day was not a good day to talk about future employment because I didn't like the creative. I thought I would probably be the suckiest heel ever, and I believe that to be pretty much true. I thought that the idea to have Dr. Yankum become, Diesel and Rick Bogner to become Razor was asinine and silly. It wasn't funny.
If you use the word silly, Bruce Pritchard will get mad at you. I used to say silly all the time, and Bruce would get that shit sniffing look on his face like you just waved a big turd under his nose and said, "Don't say silly."
Okay, well, for Bruce's sake, maybe it wasn't silly, maybe it was just stupid. So nonetheless, Steve and I talked about that and had a few laughs about it, and I interviewed him for a future podcast, and I'm also any day now getting ready to do my yearly catch up with Tony Schiavone. And the last time I had Tony on, and by the time all the tallies came in, he and I did over 1 million downloads.
Good Lord.
And
that's almost as much as we do here at the show.
Almost. Well, it's almost. I'm working on it.
Incredible.
I don't mind being a trailer hitch and opening up for you. I don't care. I'm fine.
Hey, ask Schiavone.
I'll be Sammy Davis Jr. to your Frank Sinatra. It doesn't bother me a bit.
Well, now, Alice, can you be Dean? Just get drunk and we'll work around you. Ask Schiavone.
I'll get the scotch out of the kitchen. I'll be fine.
It's right up in the cabinet. Ask Schiavone why he never comes to any reunions or legends shows or Hall of Fames or things so that everyone can see him and speak to him and revisit in his resplendency.
I think he's done. I think he enjoyed the wrestling business, but those last few years in WCW were such torture.
Yes.
And it's so miserable to be in the business, and I can understand it. Hey, he doesn't come on and bitch and moan about the wrestling business or the fans or anything like that. It's just that, he's got, he had those 5 kids. He still lives in the same house outside Atlanta he's always lived in.
And he's got PTSD when it came to working for Turner Broadcasting and WCW in those final years, I would imagine.
It was tough. It was really tough. It was stressful, and it was a lot of cooks in the kitchen and a lot of different bosses, and he'd been there a long time, and he was taken for granted a lot, and I can understand that and relate to that. But he's a sports director at WSB Radio in Atlanta. He produces the University of Georgia football and basketball games. He's on the road a lot, and he's the play-by-play voice of the Gwinnett Braves, which is the AAA farm club of the Atlanta Braves. So he's doing baseball. He's doing mainstream sports. He's producing. And so he's busy. He's like pro wrestling again. He doesn't really have an off season because, there's one season leads right into another season, into another season. So he just doesn't have a lot of time. Here's how I get him on my podcast. I get him on my podcast when they let the team have a few days off where it's All-Star game week. They go dark for 3 or 4 or 5 days during on both sides of their league's All-Star baseball game. So he hops on with me and we do our thing and we reminisce about the old days. And he's a great guest. He's a good storyteller, but he's happy and doing well. And his son, by the way, is one of the primary news producers. Lives in New York City for Fox Television. He's got a really big time job. So
one of those howl at the moon kids I accused him of having.
Yeah. I love that line. I use that on him. Said, hey, by the way, give us an update on those 5 howl at the moon kids you used to have, as Jim Cornette would say. He started laughing. But he's in a good place, and he's working hard, and the kids are all out of the house, and that's got to be a relief. So I just think that he's just done. But he likes the memories, but I don't know if he'll ever. He might get him to come back and do a few things. I think I told him that if he went to some of these WrestleCons, he'd probably have fun and at least see a few people that he liked and would enjoy seeing. you always see people that are, you wonder how you're going to be received. I listened to Ric Flair's podcast the other day, and he and David Crockett were on there and talking about Jimmy Crockett buying UWF, and somehow or another I got blamed for that. And all you can say no. That was the really easy deal. I said, hey, by the way, if you want to buy the territory, it's for sale. And Bill's going to shop it around. And I said, then the next call he's going to make to McMahon.
Well, it was actually a pretty good idea at the time if it had materialized in different fashion.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it had potential. They could have two leagues. They had two talent rosters. They could keep talent fresh, trading back and forth, but the UWF the UWF became the NWA's prison bitch. And it was absolutely abysmal.
It was just abysmal. There's an abysmal treatment like a prison bitch. Alice, can you put that on the publicity for this week's program that Jim Ross talks about the treatment of the UWF as abysmal and like a prison bitch? I think actually that's the best quote we've had in the past few months. Probably since Star
Making
Maker
a note
Bolin,
of it now.
Yeah, I think since Star Maker Bolin French kissed his dog, that's pretty much the best quote we've had on the program.
Oh my God, Star Maker Bolin. Is he 400 now, or has he lost weight?
No, we did that last week on the program. He's undergone another health scare, and we thought he was going to reform, but he's north of 400, and he's been shaving pounds off his reported weight. To me and his own son, the Prince. So,
oh Lord, that's a dangerous thing, man. And we think it's funny when we're young, and you're a little bit more resilient. The older you get, and all that excess weight it really takes its toll. And knocking on wood as I am, I hope that he will realize that he needs to fix that, and it can be addressed.
He actually last week on the program pretty much flatlined over me suggesting that he go on a diet, maybe eat better food, take care of himself, and have his mother move back in and take care of him. And he flatlined on us there for a minute. Maybe
go for a walk at night. Maybe get some exercise.
But actually,
nonetheless,
that is a good thing, because I told him, I said, all he had to do would be walk, a half a mile every day. After a week goes by, he won't know where the hell he's at.
Yeah, all right. Keep walking. I love it.
JR, thank you for being on the program. We look forward to Charlotte, the Fan Fest, NWAlegends.com for more information on everything. JR's BARBQ.com for all the information on JR's appearances, etc., as well as the podcast, the Ross Report, which is listened to faithfully around the world by everybody. And we'll see you in Charlotte, and we're going to open the thing up on July 30th with Star Power and premieres.
Oh, we'll have a good time. I'm looking forward to seeing you and catching up, and I'm excited about the opportunity to be there and see all these guys, and Jerry Briscoe and Les Thatcher and Tom Pritchard are all going to be there, guys that I like and I know and I haven't seen them. I don't see often enough. And we talked about Lance Russell and Bob Caudle going to be there. Of course, the always and effervescent and congenial Ole Anderson, no doubt, will be there at some point in time. And there's a lot of Q&As. That's the thing about the fans. This is very interactive. So there's a lot of Q&As, and so I think it's going to be a fun 4 days. And I was pleasantly surprised that our old friend Janie Engle's going to be there. Who worked for Crockett when he bought out Watts. Then she went to work for Turner and worked at WCW until the very bitter end. But
don't hold any of that against her, ladies and gentlemen, because she actually knows what she's doing.
She's a wonderful woman and a great lady, and I'm really happy to see her, because I was told that we'll pick you up at the airport. Janie Engle will pick you up at the airport. That's all right. I said, that's all right. Hell yeah, it's all right. Janie's one of the best. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of really neat people, and And I'm assuming, from what I understand, ticket sales are doing well, and they should have a hell of a crowd. And I think that there's nothing else like this anywhere, quite frankly. And so I'm excited about it. So I appreciate you having me on, and we'll be tweeting out and at JR's BBQ. That's easy. JRSBBQ on Twitter.
Oh, is it BBQ? I thought it was barbecue. See, I've just screwed the whole thing up.
That's the damn website. See, that idiot is my website. I don't know what he was thinking. I think he was drunk. But my Twitter handle is at JRSBBQ. Real simple.
Ah, so it's B on the Twitter and bar on the website.
Yes, sir. I'm afraid so. And I hate to say this because Bruce might be listening, but it's just silly.
Folks, on that note, we're done for the program this week. We'll be back next week with further information on things you need to know. Until then, for Jim Ross and Alice Radley, I'm Jim Cornette. So long for the experience.